A lot of.
I may fall right back down, but your love lifts me back to solid ground.
Morning, everybody. So we're sitting here on our couch, and I've got Enson here, just setting the phone down. And over the weekend, over the weekend, recently Anthony Smith fought Glover Teixeira at UFC Florida, and there's been quite a bit of controversy about the way the fight went down, and so I just have a few points of discussion and questions that people have been asking Enson, so we thought we'd do a live and have a chat about it.
Yeah, a lot of notes on a lot of things that like on the forums and to me that they want to know what I thought about the two fights that had the big controversy. Like the one is the Dominick Cruz fight, where he was complaining the stoppage was too early, and the other one was the Smith fight where the corner didn't stop the fight. That was real big discussions.
Yeah, so I've got a list of statements here that people have been making online or kind of voicing their opinions. So I'm just going to throw out the statement and then have Enson discuss his opinion and what he thinks about it.
And if you guys have questions, you guys can send in the questions and then we can answer. Before we start with the Smith one, I just want to go over the Dominick Cruz one. You know, Dominick Cruz was, in my opinion, was arguing that the fight was stopped too soon. But the thing that I always remember is that the referee has the hardest job in the house. You know, when you have to give a fighter a fair chance to continue, and you have to look out for the fighter's safety, that's a real hard job. So when you look at the fight, you know, there's a real fine point on when the referee has to decide to jump in or jump and not. And sometimes you see a fight and you think, oh, if the referee jumped right now would be a good time to stop. But he waits and then the guy sort of recovers and then he jumps in. That's when it looks like a bad decision. Dominick Cruz's biggest point was that he was getting up. Just look at the questions.
Yeah.
So like he was getting up. So if you really look at the fight, watch the replay again. Dominick Cruz, from one of the strikes, actually went a little limp. And at that point in time is when the referee decided to jump in. It was unfortunate for the referee that, you know, you have to referees have to make a guess on if this is dangerous. And at that point that Dominick looked like he went a little limp is when the referee decided that this is the time to jump in. And that's when Dominick Cruz actually, you know, sometimes fighters get kind of lost, they're knocked out and get hit again, they wake up. So at that time, Dominick Cruz, when the split second when the referee decided to start jumping in, Dominick Cruz actually started getting up. So I think the stoppage was good. It was just unfortunate timing for Dominick Cruz, because if the referee decided to jump in a split second sooner, it would have been a good stoppage. But because before the split second he decided to jump in that time, Dominick Cruz actually started recovering. That made it look like a bad stoppage. So take a look at that. It's when the referee jumps in, in my opinion. So I think the referee did the best of his abilities to decide at that moment, and things, the split second when from where he was to get to Dominick Cruz, things were a little different.
Okay, so there's a comment there. Someone just said, Daniel Alexander said, when the eyes rolled back, they should have to stop it. Do you agree or disagree? Or?
Oh, definitely. That's a definite one. But also you got to remember, his eyes could have rolled back, and the next punch, he might have gained consciousness again. You've seen that in a lot of fights. You get hit, and then you get hit again, and you wake up. So that was, again, it would be the same, the timing of the referee.
Okay. All right. So that's I'm only going to be reading out the questions just for people that are tuning in. So it's not like we're ignoring people saying hi. It's just that I'm trying to get to all the questions so that the video doesn't go too long. All right, so jumping into the Anthony Smith versus Glover Teixeira fight. So the controversy around that is that it was kind of let go too long. And here are some of the statements that people have come out with. And people just want to know your opinion. The first one was, if you can't win, there's no sense continuing the fight.
That's not true. One of the big things that I need to point out is I'm giving my opinion on the type of fighter I was. I fought not just for the sport, but I fought for the bigger learning experience of building yourself as a person, not just getting a hand raised in the ring. So I think a lot of these comments that I disagree with is comments that are made because this person is looking pure sport. But you can't make that judgment on pure sport unless you know that the two fighters in there are also fighting for just pure sport. And the corners know that. Then, you can kind of judge the decision. But, like, if you can't win, no sense. I mean, I've had fights that I knew I couldn't win. But it wasn't about winning and losing for me. It was about continuing and working through the adverse situation. So winning and losing depends on how much it means. And it's also not right in a sport because you can't win. So if you lose the first 3 rounds, you may as well just quit the fight. You don't fight the last 2 rounds. I mean, you're gonna give up on yourself. That'll probably combine with another question, that I'm realizing now that, you can't anticipate the outcome.
Yeah, you don't know the outcome.
Yeah,
the last
so
2 rounds, you might be down 3
how do you
rounds.
even decide if you can't win?
Yeah.
I mean, you can think you can't win. The odds can be against you winning.
Do you think if you can't win, you shouldn't be fighting in the first place? Like if you're kind of going with that mentality?
No, because every fight I picked, I didn't think I could win. So then I shouldn't even fight. So it's a whole difference in opinion, Okay.
All right. So the next statement was, his cauliflower ear broke and had 2 cuts on his face. Is that too much damage?
Depends on what the fighter has prepared himself to do. If you're prepared to come out of the fight unscathed, be prepared to be there's no serious injuries in your fight, then yes, it's too much damage. But if you're preparing to fight as hard as you can until you can't physically fight, it's not too much damage. And then you go to another extreme of a fighter like me. I was prepared to die, and it might sound stupid, but there are still fighters out there today that are prepared to die. Who was that just fought? Justin Gaethje. He even mentioned that, So if you're prepared to die, a cut, broken ear, popped ear, whatever, broken arm, broken foot, torn ligaments in your knee is not enough because you're alive. So, it depends what you prepare for, I believe. Yeah.
It looks like someone shares that mindset with you.Got Carl Weber here from New Zealand saying, I was criticized for not throwing in the towel when Dan Hooker fought Edson Barboza. That was a war, UFC New Zealand.
Oh, I remember
recently.
that one. Yeah.
So it just shows that. So he obviously has a similar mindset to you.
Yeah, and also it's the same situation. If Carl and his fighters have a communication and they understand what they're fighting for. If Carl knows that Dan Hooker wants to fight till the end. I mean, for me, when I went in the corner, if Carl was cornering me, that's exactly what I would tell him, that I will not have the towel thrown in. Egan knew that, so I think people can't criticize a cornerman because the cornerman knows his fighter the best and understands the situation and why the fighter's fighting.
I just correct myself too. They didn't fight at UFC New Zealand. It was before that. He fought Felder in New Zealand.
Okay. Some questions.
Okay. So, Overeem Harris is good. Eddie Bravo discussed this yesterday about cornering Ferguson.
I saw that. Poor thing, man. It looked like he got thrown in with the wolves because the corner was lost and he got kind of lost too.
All right. So a point that Chael Sonnen brought up was the corner has one job, and that's to get the fighter home safe.
Yeah, depending what the objective of the fighter is, and depending on what your word of safe is. If your word of safe is no cuts, no bruises, everything, then that guy has to stop the fight. For me, if I fought, I'm an extreme, so let's go with someone else. Say other fighter that's really fighting, wants to give everything they got. They don't care about cuts, they don't care about bruises, they don't care about a split eye, they don't care about a popped ear. they'll continue to fight. Maybe they're worried about torn ligaments. So if the fighter's ligaments will be torn, then maybe his corner will stop the fight. I was on another extreme. I was about building myself as a man, even if it required me dying in the ring. And what was that question again?
Saying the corner has one job.
Yeah, and so my corner had one job, and Egan understood this, and everyone who cornered me and watched me train and spill blood, tears, and sweat in the 3 months of training understood was that my objective and my whole game was being safe, in my words, was to not become a coward, even if it required dying. So that's also very extreme, but that's also an idea that, it depends on what safe is.
Okay.
And the corners, that is not the corner's only job. The corners has many jobs. That is maybe one of the jobs and its interpretation of what safe is.
Okay. The next statement was, if you're fatigued and out of energy, you should stop the fight.
No, that's... I've known a lot of fighters that fought through fatigue, got a second win. I know a lot of fighters that, like me, we used to train through fatigue. So we understand that once we get fatigued, there's certain things we can and cannot do. So fatigue is an obstacle. It is not a reason to stop the fight. If I'm fatigued and I can't fight anymore, then my heart kicks in. And I want to see how far my heart can continue and make myself fight through it. I always believe, I always tell Sarah, you hitting mitts and you get tired, you're doing combinations. If you start getting really tired and your arms getting heavy, shorter combinations. If you're getting really tired and you feel the muscles burning, 1-2, 1-2. And I always also feel that, when you're hurt, you're fatigued to a point where you can't even throw 1-2. You can always throw one punch. There's always one punch you can throw. And one punch, whether you're fatigued or not, one punch can land. A good example is, who was that? That guy who took off his shorts.
Derek Lewis.
Look at some of his fights. I mean, if you can't win, no sense continue. If you're fatigued, you need to stop the fight. Couple of his wins, 2 or 3 of his wins, when he came out and won in the last second, when he was losing the whole fight, would have been stopped and he would have been robbed of victory.
So kind of flowing off that, one of the statements was, some might say he was just trying to be a tough guy.
No, I think at the damage and the depth of the war that it went into is beyond being a tough guy, and someone who is there in a superficial way to just be a tough guy will not push through something like that. So I don't think it was about being tough. I think it was about the fighter knowing himself and the corner knowing the fighter that he can continue, and they let him continue.
So some say that he was sending signals to his team. Nobody helped him. He was pleading for help. Is that what he was talking about, his teeth falling out? Is that kind of tied into that too? Yeah. After?
Yeah. Well, the signals to his team is if anyone were to be able to read signals, would be the fighter in his corner. Mm. His corner knows him better than any of you outside watching TV. And if he's giving any type of signals, the corner would be able to pick on it most. One of the big things that was mentioned was his teeth. He said his teeth are falling out. When I heard that, I said, oh shit, maybe that is a signal. And even then I thought, if it was a signal, the team would have picked up because they know him. So the fact that it didn't, I felt that, that would give me, like, if I'm taking a guess, and, if the corner was people that never saw him train and just came and cornered him because he needed a corner, then yeah, maybe. But that has no bearing on me because of that. And I heard after that he has some type of dental work that he had problems with.
Veneers.
Yeah. So and apparently in training, that it would loosen, it would start falling out. So apparently that's what it meant. And that's a perfect example that the trainer knows his fighter. They've been training with him for 3 months, hard training, and they know what he's capable of and what he's been through. And every comment he makes, they'll probably understand. Like, I thought when I heard his teeth are falling out, holy shit, he got his teeth loose, and he's talking about that in his corner. Looks like he's kind of not wanting to fight, but Apparently not.
And just kind of flowing off that, is that a reason why, like people, you've told me people have asked you to corner and you've been reluctant or you kind of turn it down. Is that one of the reasons why? Because you don't know them well enough?
Yeah, if people, a lot of people have asked me to corner, and I haven't seen a day of training with them. Whether I know their style or not, or whether I've trained them in the past before, I didn't see the training that they did for this fight. I didn't see the movements that they can and cannot do. I didn't see what they do in times of fatigue. I didn't see what they do in times of adverse situations where they're getting beaten up. And I believe the corner needs to know their fighter to a T, to from the fine points of what he's feeling. So unless I can be in the camp, watch the fighter train, I don't think being in the corner is to any
Benefit.
advantage.
Okay. Don't worry, I'm keeping an eye on those. Right. And so we talked about teeth. So this kind of I feel like ties in with one of the previous statements. So the next one is no sense continuing the fight if the outcome won't change. So is that almost like if you can't win, no sense continue?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another point on top of that is like mailman.
Yeah. Connect.
Should be okay. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Should be okay.
Okay.
Oh yeah, go.
Okay. We are live.
We are live,
We're
and
live.
we got our security guarding the gate. Okay, well anyway, so we go back on like about no sense continue if the fight if you can't the outcome will change. You can't predict the outcome. No outcome is 100% predictable. If the outcome is to win then yeah, if the outcome of winning isn't going to happen, yeah. If the outcome is to, for me, push yourself and to build yourself and push yourself and see if you can push to the limits, then you would never know my outcome until the end of the fight. So I don't think the outcome should matter. I mean, it's about fighting those complete rounds, if it's 3 rounds or 5 rounds, fighting all the rounds to the best of your ability. That's your job.
Okay. It's another so again going on fatigue, Chael Sonnen says his biggest fear in fighting is fatigue.
No, he's not saying his. Actually, what he was saying was the biggest. He made a statement saying that all fighters, letting people know that. Oh, what does Sally say? What's up, Sally? Yeah, we got to do a barbecue soon. But anyway, fatigue. Chael said that almost like letting non-fighters know that the fighter's biggest fear is fatigue. I personally disagree. Some fighters, maybe it is. And when he first said it, I was saying, maybe. But then I thought my biggest fear whenever I got into the ring was not fatigue. Fatigue was a step into what would become my greatest fear. My greatest fear when I was fighting is how I would react when I get fatigued. Would I turn into a coward? Would I cower up? Would I just ball up? Would I look for a way out? That was my biggest fear. So I disagree with Chael that the biggest fear in fighters is fatigue. It is a huge fear. That's a shitty thing to fatigue. But for me, and I think for fighters who are true martial artists and fighters that are willing to put it all on the line, fatigue is one of the things that you accept. A stretched ligament, a broken orbital, a swollen eye or eye swollen shut. It's all part of the obstacles that you will face, and fatigue is one of them. My biggest fear was what I would do with the fatigue, how I would react. There's a saying, a strong man has no fear, but a man with the samurai spirit, Yamato Damashi, will feel fear, but will learn to work through it. So I disagree with that fatigue being the biggest fear.
Okay. So moving now to post-fight. So post-fight, Anthony actually credited his corner and agrees with what they did.
Yeah, so in his Twitter and stuff, he's totally agreeing that his corner did the right thing. So apparently, even in the heart of it, after with hindsight sitting back, he still feels it was the right decision. I think that should trump everything.
Yeah.
All these guys who are trying to say that the corner screwed up or the corner didn't do a good job, the fighter just voiced it after the fight, after the fact. And if he feels that way,
I mean, that should have most of the bearing too, because they're the ones that are in there. It's it's their whatever risks they're taking.
So obviously the things that they thought were signs that he was throwing his corner was just speculation.
Yeah.
And it was mistakes, yeah.
Yeah, because that happened also to Raquel Pennington when I think she fought Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
The same thing happened. Everyone thought that the corner let it go too long, but afterwards the exact same thing happened. She stood by her corner, as you should, because your corner knows you the best.
Yeah, so fans and even someone like Shale, they need to remember that every fighter isn't fighting for the same reasons. Every fighter doesn't have the same type of heart. Every fighter isn't prepared in the same way. Like some of them prepare to die. You can't set a straight set of rules on when fights should be stopped. It should be depending on the fighter, depending on their outcome, their mindset. I don't think you can make a general decision of when fights should be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, a few points on that.
And a few points I had is one, Anthony Smith, he's named himself Lionheart. His nickname is Lionheart. He always talks about whatever, he has more heart. He always mentions heart, how strong his heart is. With that said, I don't think that fight should have been stopped. I mean, he even claims himself he has a lot of heart. His cornerman obviously knew that, and apparently this fight that they let continue was something that he wanted to do, and that was part of his nature. So I think, that's a big hint too, the fact that his name is Lionheart. The ones who say no, it's still wrong, or poor Anthony, they feel sorry for him. They feel like the corner didn't protect him. Always remember, the fighter can always tap. There's always that option. The fighter can always tap. And, a lot of times it's hard. Hindsight is, something that you can make a lot of comments on after the fact. Criticizing the corner for something that they didn't do in a split-second decision where you had like a split second in the round to decide whether to stop it or not. Easy to look back and see that he didn't win the fight and it was a bad decision. So I want to point that out. I also want to point out one more saying that I thought of is where there's a saying that where your fears will become your limits. And I also, changed a little bit of the wording in it, like, where you decide to discontinue your struggle becomes your limits. Yeah, so wherever he decides that that's all he can do and he quits, it becomes his limits.
So Saleh just said, instant growing in the MMA, where in your career you found yourself understanding, studying yourself and realizing it's more you than what your opponent can do. For me, it's more, I believe in my ability, and if I can do what I'm capable of, I'll never lose.
Yeah, that's important. For me too, it was, I believed in myself. I trained as hard as I could. So I knew every time I walked in the ring that I'm at the best of who I am. And regardless of what the opponent does, the outcome will come out if he's a better fighter than me. And I think a big thing for me, and sumo's super hard because you need to put in the wins and the victory. You need the victories. You need the kachikoshi. You need to win to promote it, to maintain your status. Fighting isn't like that for me. If I went to my best of my abilities and pushed everything I had, I knew I always would be victorious. But the difference in that is my interpretation of victory wasn't getting my hand raised at the end of the ring. My interpretation of victory was giving everything I had. And if I was never broken here in my heart, I consider victory. So I'm actually still undefeated. All right.
All right. There's just that, as you were talking,
Yeah.
it kind of, I think this thing, how it gets all controversial, I think it opens up again to that bigger topic of the statement that Don Fry made years ago, that sport has gone from fighting, which is how it was in your days, to sport, and now it's entertainment. So the kind of the perceived I don't know how to say it. Perception has changed.
Yeah.
It's like people don't look at it as fighting how your era would have looked at it.
MMA has moved from a martial art to a sport and even to entertainment now.
Yeah.
But what people need to remember is in this MMA, there are fighters fighting for different reasons. There are still martial artists. You got Justin Gaethje, you got Khabib, you have now, Anthony Smith. You have martial artists fighting in this sport. Hey, be quiet. You have martial artists fighting in this sport. So, that's what's hard. That's what's hard when everything goes to sport. Like Shell sees it as a sport, obviously. When everything goes to sport and you have martial artists in there. I just feel that it's unfortunate that I feel sorry for the martial artists that are still fighting in the sport because it's really hard for them. The shit talking, like Khabib can't deal with the shit talking, takes it seriously. You get all these points that sometimes what's happening here for the entertainment part of the sport, it doesn't work for martial artists. So, very hard. But, is that it?
I think that's a wrap.
Style versus style is the best, yeah. All right, but we just wanted to put this out on a live just to discuss these points because I was getting questions and to write it down would have been just too crazy. So
there's so many factors to consider. It's not just a straight black and white answer. It's one that needs discussion. And again, these are Enson's opinions, and other people may have different opinions, as we've seen with Chael. So it really is a perspective thing.
And the reason why I decided to voice his opinions because I feel that Anthony Smith is fighting with the same mindset that I used to fight with as a martial artist. So, all right.
So Barrett, actually, one last question, Barrett in there. Do you think that one day it'll only be sport?
Yes. Unfortunately, Barrett, I think eventually it'll fall to sport, and I think even to a point where it's almost like WWE, where it's sport entertainment, which is for me is unfortunate. I mean, it's a hypocritical answer for me because I don't like the fact that it's turning to entertainment, but I do love the fact that MMA has become such a major sport in the world. So
I have one to add to that then. So if it's going to head to sport, do you think, because I don't even think that martial artists will die down or disappear, do you think that maybe there'll be like a second wave or an underground of events that have almost like smaller kind of pride style fights, or like
if someone that has an unlimited bank account that doesn't need to worry about selling tickets and there's nothing financial that he needs to worry about, there will be something come. I actually even considered running an event like that where, the wins, lose don't matter. You just get martial artists, no shit talking, no bullshit. But in this day and age, I don't think so because it's about, creating the crowd. And I notice also the general audience now, the fans love the shit talking, and they love the hype to it. So unfortunately, martial artists, a group of martial artists fighting is a little boring sometimes. The fights will be like almost to the death where they push themselves, and it'll be inspiring, but it'll have problems with the too dangerous. It'll go back to human cockfighting. There's so much things that are cons for it to stay a martial art, and then there's also pros to it. The way they're making rules or weight classes. There's so much good things about that too. So,
okay,
all
I think
right.
we're good. Thank you everybody for tuning in. If there are questions like this that you want Enson to discuss for future fights, send them through, and we'll save a few of those questions like we did here, and we can put it into a video to answer.
Oh, and Bogey
Alive.
Judah, just a minute. Bogey, if you guys want some of the best CBD in the world, global CBD, you guys look at Bogey and message him.
All right.
All right, okay. Thanks for your time, guys.
Take care.